Good evening, everybody, again. Well, we are now in the last session of the day, and a very interesting session. And we will start straight off. May I request Dr. Ganesh Natarajan to come on the dais. I would also request Pradeep Bhargava to come on the dais. And I would also request Uma to come on the dais. See, I said this session is going to be interesting because not only we have Dr. Ganesh Natarajan speaking on some innovative thinking on skill development, but when these two guys who are on the dais right now, Dr. Ganesh Natarajan and Pradeep Bhargava, when they met outside, they said, "Sale, tu kahan hai?" So that kind of a friendship, I think, is very useful for the evening session when they can fight, they can argue, and make this session interesting by various, interesting statements, which could be challenged and which could be answered. There is no need to introduce both of them. You know both of them very well. They have been very successful leaders. They have been, leading big companies, and they have been associated with various companies. They have been presenting on the different platforms, discussing various issues, including skill development. And they also been engaged in a very big way in skill development initiatives. Dr. Ganesh Natarajan is one of the leaders of Indian IT. He led Zensar as CEO for last over a decade now. And we all know how Zensar has progressed under his leadership. He's been a chairman of National Knowledge Committee of CII. Has been the member of the Chairman's Council of NASSCOM. Earlier, he was president of NASSCOM too. He is an alumnus of IIT, then Harvard Business School. He's been recipient of Asia Pacific Entrepreneurship Award by Enterprise Asia in 2010. He has been recognized by E&Y as for his exceptional leadership. And he is an author too, authored 4 books. And with him is his better half, Uma, who is also actively involved in skill development, and she runs her own institution, and which is doing an excellent work. So that's why I invited her also on the dais, and would also like to know from her about her various skill initiatives. To start with, may I request Dr. Ganesh Natarajan to present his views on this very, very important issue of skill development and how we can move towards innovative skill development. Ganesh.
Thank you, Anand, and good evening to all of you. I realize that you had a long day of discussions, so I'm not going to make a long speech, but I think it'll be good to share some thoughts, share some ideas, and then, of course, we have bigger experts here. I mean, the Bhishma Pitama of skills, Mr. Pradeep Bhargava, okay, with whom everything begins and ends. We have the young Arjun, Mr. Sandhu, who is the skills hope for Maharashtra, so I'm really glad to see you here, sir. And of course, Uma, as Anand rightly said, has been working in skills and education for the last 25 years, right from ZTV's first education venture to AppTech, NIIT, and now Global Talent Track. So I think we have enough thinking, enough richness, enough ideas in this panel. And I would love to, in whatever time we have, open it up to any suggestions, any questions, any ideas you have, because innovation is a big topic. First of all, I was just thinking on the way, and I just drove in from Mumbai. I said, what does it really take to need innovation? Because nowadays, in any conference, innovation is the first thing you talk about. और कोई topic नहीं मिला, innovation डाल दो. Because it's such a nice catch-all topic. But this is one area, if you look at skills, and I'm sure from morning you had tons of data thrown at you, so I won't throw more data at you. But at a very simple level, if you really look at what needs to be done, last year, the whole of last year, if you look at NSDC, and I believe Dilip Chenoy was here this morning, he would have shared that with you. Assuming that we trained 1 million people in skills, or skilled 1 million people through NSDC, sector skills councils, various efforts, etc. But don't forget the agenda. We are talking about 250 million people to be skilled, and skilled to a level where they are employable and can get employed in the next, maybe in the next 4, 5, 6 years. You pick a number, it's still too big. Because the 1 million into 250, well, I mean, you're talking about 250 years. We don't have 250 years. So, which is one reason why, without innovation, without thinking out of the box, we can all do whatever we try and do, and I think we all do some very good work, and I'm sure in this room there are many training providers, universities, as well as practitioners who are doing good stuff. But collectively, if we have to make a difference, it has to be a very substantial difference. All of us have heard, whether it's Prime Minister or the Chief Minister of Maharashtra, or in fact, I was in a meeting last week with the Pune Municipal Commissioner. As most of you know, in this city, there's a lot of excitement that Pune has made it to the top 98 list of smart cities. And the purpose of our meeting 2 days back and the purpose of the meeting we're having tomorrow morning is how do we make the top 20? Because the top 20 is where I think the holy grail and the riches are. And we were actually brainstorming, what are those truly innovative pan-city initiatives? What are those retrofitting, re-engineering initiatives we can do in the city to make it truly innovative? Now, if I link smart city, the smart city of Pune, let's say 2 years from now, with what could be skills, let me give you a story. Imagine a young person, could be a person from Chandan Nagar, which is one of the slum areas that we operate in terms of CSR, or for that matter, from any of the good colleges, is actually going down the street and waiting for a BRT bus to come. And obviously on a smartphone, he has all the information available on when the next bus is, etc. When he has time and he's waiting at the bus stop, all he does is, every bus stop has the pillars of the bus stop, which is embedded beacons. I'll explain to you what an iBeacon is later. But imagine there's a beacon there, which actually has the latest nugget of skills on healthcare, skills on education, skills on whatever. And he just presses his phone against that, downloads a skill, and it's really a skillet in the sense that something that he can maybe just learn in 15 minutes, gets into the bus, and he's actually watching a full audio-visual presentation on a specific area of that skill which he can learn. And when we talk about skills, one is skilling in centers and all the big centers that we talk about. But as I mentioned, it's only by using little innovations where skilling is happening all the time. There are skills, possibilities available in the environment around you that we can make that happen. Just one example. If you look at the opportunities, that's why I said, if you look at what all our leaders have been telling us, all the big initiatives we talk about. Skill India is the most recent, which I was listening to Rajiv Pratap Rudy yesterday, talking about the challenges, corporate sector is now not coming forward, and we'll come to all that a little later. But if you look at the opportunities and all the big themes that have been announced, you look at the Swachh Bharat Abhiyan, look at Make in India, look at Digital India, Skills India, all this can happen only if there is a fundamental underpinning of motivated and skilled manpower in the system. And that is something that we have to keep in mind. See, one of the biggest problems today is obviously capacity, because we don't have enough capacity, as I've already talked about, to do this kind of training. The second problem, which people don't really look at, is very, very wishy-washy quality of a majority of skills providers. I was pleased to hear that, this recent Niti Aayog decision that, look, there will be a skills university whose first objective is to certify skilling professionals and trainers. And of course, all of you have read about the new skills policy, where you have this entire layer of, from the Prime Minister's Yojana, the bottom level, to the livelihood colleges, to the multi-skill institutes, to the skills universities, the huge opportunities. But while we are waiting for all this to happen, we must find methods by which a modicum of normal good quality is introduced in every skilling program in the country. Otherwise, we can do all the sector skills council, we can put all the qualifications pack together, define all the job roles, which I am myself doing as part of the sector skills council of NASSCOM. But it will not happen unless we have that average quality of skill provider is above a certain level, which can enable people to be employable. So I think that's the second point we need to think about. We started thinking about this in the IT sector, and I'll kind of share that example with you so that we can scale it to any other sector. And we started thinking and said, look, what is it we can do? As most of you know, I mean, even today, whether we like it or not, most of the new job creation is being done by the IT sector. In the formal sector last year, something like 300,000 job opportunities were created. 220,000 of those were created by the IT sector. And it is a fact that a lot of my friends in manufacturing don't like me saying this, but most engineers, whether they're doing chemical engineering, mechanical engineering, civil engineering, or IT or computer engineering, would like a job in the software exports business and go to America and all that good stuff. But we found that IT, I mean, if you look at it as skilled manpower, you all heard about the whole stories of IT industry saying, engineers are not employable, less than 15% of the engineers are really employable by us. And we know this problem. We also don't realize that most of these people are working in maybe 9 to 10 cities. I mean, if you take the 7 cities which go right from, NCR, which is, and of course the three cities in South India plus Bombay, Delhi, Pune and Calcutta, this together accounts for 97% of our $150 billion industry. And the question that we ask ourselves is that when we talk about inclusive India and digital India, this is not about smart city of Pune, it's not about Mumbai, it's not about Delhi, it's about how we take the whole country and make that average level of high quality skills available everywhere. How do we do that in a country as large as this size? So when we address the IT problem, we said, look, the first thing we have to do in digital India, for instance, is to make sure that broadband is available everywhere in the country. That's not an innovation, that's a prerequisite. Because if you're going to use a blended technology where actually you're going to use technology to provide skills, you can't do it in a small town if the guy doesn't even have a decent internet. So if you look at the National Broadband Mission, which is one of the first dimensions of Digital India, we said, let's make sure that we can work to make that happen. Then we started thinking, saying, assuming broadband is available, how do we ensure that the young person growing up in Mizoram has equal access to an eventual job in TCS or Infosys or Zensar as somebody growing up in Pune and studying in PICT or COEP or VIT or whichever are the good colleges actually has. So we said that again will happen only if we are able to do collaborative CSR. So for instance, what we are doing, and in fact Uma's company plays a very big role in that, they work with, whether it's Infosys or Genpact or the big companies, and say, look, if you have some CSR funds, let's deploy it towards educating young people, not in the Delhi and Mumbai and Gurgaon and Noida, but in Assam, in rural Bihar, and the guarantee is that let's deploy this to create a pool of employable talent. So if today the industry needs, next year, let's pick a number, 1.5 lakh people, how about training 10 lakh people, making each one of them employable and giving them all opportunities, not only to join the companies, but maybe to set up their own. All of you have heard about the e-commerce revolution, and all of this needs skills. So if you suddenly multiply the available pool of skilled talent from what is today required to maybe 10 times that size, and then you take it to construction, you take it to the manufacturing industry, take it to the beautician industry, whichever other industries, multiple sectors are available, then suddenly you have this large pool of talent being created. So this is one area where we have to innovate by people getting together and not saying, my company needs so many people, I will go to these colleges and recruit and train, but I will train on a much larger basis and then recruit as and when I need this. We are doing this in our own organization with great results. What we used to, for next year, we may recruit maybe 450 young people, but we're going to train 2,000 people so that the pool is increased and even other smaller companies can avail of the benefits that we have created. So that's one dimension. The second is what I call, this is really creating new products for innovative skills. The second is process innovation. I mentioned the beacon area. You have to have multiple different innovative methods of creating skills. Okay, let me give you one more example. All of us know, in fact, in my own capacity in our social initiative, we are working with many of the NGOs in this city. There is an outstanding institution called Jagruti, for instance. And Jagruti primarily trains nursing aides, not the nurses, but the young women or the young men who are actually working in geriatric nursing, etc., and who are just helping the nurses to be more successful. Any one of us who have had a hospital experience in this city, and including some of the better hospitals, will know that the doctors are great. The attention to patients is what is lacking. Because you have very untrained staff, who are really not, even in the intensive care units, they're not really taking enough care of you. And we're saying, how can we solve this problem? And imagine a situation, again, I'll give you an idea, that you can skill the person. Like in Jagruti, we do a full 6-week, full-time course. At the end of it, all these young girls are getting jobs in hospitals. But at some point, by just doing repetitive stuff, they're losing the willingness to learn. So again, imagine a situation, you all have CCTVs all over the place, it's being advertised, it's being bought in large numbers. How about it if you actually had a method by which each activity of a nurse or a nursing aide or the ICU is being recorded, not with a view to punish anybody, but to just point out saying that, look, we can take this learning, which is learning coming through video, take what we call a big data approach, which is analyze what is happening, and on a customized basis for each nursing aide or each nursing helper, saying that, look, you need to be more capable in this area or that area. See, because this whole problem we have of one size fits all, everybody must get the same training program, is just not working anymore. We have to look at an individual and say, how can we make it happen? The last example I want to give you, we have this initiative, which is actually a joint initiative of Zensar and Thermax. And it is actually a center we have set up on Satara Road. And this is a center which we created in all good intentions 2 years back. And that provides training in, I mean, whether it is pizza delivery operators or, basic skills. And we said that, look, to make it really successful, we will make sure that it's a phenomenal intensive course. It's almost like an 8-week full-time program. We said we will fund everything. The student doesn't have to pay anything at all. And finally, we'll guarantee the job at the end of it. When I first talked about it, I said, what's the catch? I mean, we'll be like overwhelmed with people who want to learn, get trained, because we're guaranteeing placement as well. You'll be surprised. Every month we have a batch of 30 students starting. The average batch size that starts is 8 or 10. And there are enough people looking for jobs in the city. And we keep asking, we are providing first-class skills. We have a Bangalore agency who has done it in Bangalore many times, is doing this with us. So what's the problem? And again, we're finding that, look, we believe, sitting in this room, we all think that if we can skill people, everything can be made perfectly, everybody will come. But don't forget, we also have a somewhat cynical citizenry, not only in Pune, but all over the country. We're saying, "Isse kya fayda hoga? I'll do this, and then maybe you'll get me a 6,000 rupees per month job." I don't want it. I mean, I can get that job myself. Why would I put myself through 8 weeks of rigorous training? So the question that we'll ask ourselves now is, how do we skill people well enough that maybe not immediately, but 1 year or 2 years down the line, they're getting the 20,000 rupee per month job. That's what seems to excite people today. So we actually have a model which I'll end with. We're saying that, look, if we have to solve the national problem in future, forget about the national problem, if we have to make everybody in Pune, I mean, we have a mission with the PMC which we call, which is actually called Suvidya Shakshar Swachh Pune, which really means better education, digital literacy, and clean Pune. And this is something that we are working on along with the Pune Municipal Corporation. But if you look at an agenda like that, it starts with, ladies and gentlemen, creating the need for a better lifestyle. I know it sounds stupid to you, but we have been working in 2 of the wards in the city of Pune, and you go and talk to a person who has not seen a great lifestyle, he's not even interested. He's almost like people have resigned themselves to their lot saying, "Yahi mera bhavishya yahi hai," which is dangerous. So I'm saying the first thing we need to do as responsible citizens of this city, and then the state, and then the country, is to make sure that we bring about what we call agency. I mean, agency is the need or the desire to transform myself. Once that basic agency happens, then before you start doing training and say, oh, okay, we can be doing this course, which people are not interested in, can we then do a formal needs analysis which says that, look, can we counsel people? Can we show them by an immersive learning experience that if you became a healthcare assistant, a lathe operator, or whatever, I mean, construction worker, this is the kind of job opportunities you have. This is where you'll start. 2 years later, this is what you could be. 10 years later, this is what you could be. Can we build the dream that people aspire to actually get that skill to get that job? Then, and only then, which is really the third phase, which a lot of us ignore, then we design appropriate training programs with the appropriate blend of technologies. I mean, I already mentioned whether it's the iBeacons, experiential learning, immersion in retail stores or hospitals or manufacturing companies, and make that happen. Then we provide that training, and then we assist them with placement. So my belief is, okay, when you talk about innovations, I mean, I'll go back to my old theory from Harvard Business School, that innovation can happen only if it is ambidextrous. What is ambidextrous? Using 2 hands, which really means while you continue to improve the quality of existing skills processes, which all of us are trying to do, we keep thinking about exploring new ideas, completely transformative methods of delivering the same outcomes, but delivering it through different processes. So we need product innovation, which means we need to create new products and services and skills to make that happen. We need process innovation. As I mentioned, how do we use the national broadband network, the national optical fiber network, smart cities, everything that we are talking about, to also think through how can we transform skills and education through this process. And last but not the least, I mean, you've taken care of the product, you've taken care of the process. We also need to, as I mentioned right in the beginning, collaboratively build a business model where academic institutions participate, government participates, people like Mr. Sandhu participate, all of us who are well-meaning people in the city of Pune, Pune International Center, for instance, which is such a wonderful think tank, all of us get together and say, let's make a microcosm of excellence happen in Pune. Let's take 2 wards and maybe have 5 collaborative groups come together and do this agency to counseling, to training, to job creation as we go along. Because my belief, ladies and gentlemen, I want to end with this, is that if we can make this happen in our city, if we can demonstrate, okay, I'm sure Mr. Sandhu can take it across Maharashtra. I'm sure there are enough people like him who can then take good exemplars, good models, whether in ITIs or wherever else, and take it across. And then hopefully this big gap this yawning gap we see in front of us, the 250 million people to be skilled, I think we can seriously start to address that one by one. So thank you very much for listening to me. We're very happy, as I said, both Pradeep and Uma and Anant and I are very happy to engage before we break for dinner. Thank you.
Thank you, Ganesh. I think before we start, the discussion interaction session, I would like to invite Uma to come here and share her experiences.
Good evening, everybody. Thank you for having me over here and asking me to share some perspectives on this very exciting theme of the need for innovation in the area of skills development. As a skills training practitioner or as a stakeholder in this movement that this country is currently focused upon, I have some experience and some ringside observations of what are the challenges we as a country are facing in this area and what are the areas which require attention, particularly in the context of innovation. So there are many things that we can talk about, but Ganesh has set out some outlines, some ideas he's already shared. So I will pick 2 or 3 areas which we think are very crucial in terms of how we address the larger agenda of skills development that we are working towards. The biggest challenge, or we can say the opportunity that this country has before it, is how do we achieve scale? So when we think about skill development, last year NSDC managed to find resources and trained through its network of partners close to about 1 million people. This year, there is a roadmap for skilling close to about 2.2 million people. But this is, again, a small drop in the ocean when we look at a very large number, 250 million or 500 million that we need to address. So how do we reach this scale? So there are many ideas that everybody has been talking about, having more training partners, having universities to adopt skills curriculum. There are ideas like BWalk, which some of the universities have come forward to adopt. And of course, we always keep talking about technology and how technology can enable larger number of people to be skilled. And we ourselves have done some very interesting projects in the states of Kerala, and now we are going to roll out in 5 other states virtual classroom-based training for ITIs. And simultaneously, one trainer can train up to maybe 150 or 200 students. So these are all good initiatives, and we need many more such initiatives. But the biggest challenge when we talk about scaling is not only finding physical resources of class technology, equipment, but trainer is a very, very critical resource, as all of us would agree upon. Now, when we think about trainers, once again, this is not the most lucrative career opportunity for young people, or for that matter, people who have the ability to train. They also have other attractive opportunities ahead of them. But there are very large number of people out there who have the ability, who have the willingness, but they do not know how to connect the dots and come forward and be part of this movement. So that is where an interplay of technology, detailed profiling, an opportunity to let them know how they can come onto this platform, where they can, they would be able to assess for themselves which are the areas where they have the capability to train themselves in. And in case there are certain areas where they have lacunae, they can also get trained. And by a combination of all of these methods, we would be suddenly in a position to have a very, very large pool of people drawn from women segment, drawn from those who have retired from the defense, drawn from defense services. We also have large number of people who have retired from other walks of life. Plus, there are others who are willing to make themselves available during their spare time. And large number of companies are these days encouraging their own employees to volunteer for such services. And in fact, there are companies who are saying even during office hours, if you want to set aside 16 hours, 20 hours, 30 hours, depending upon the policy of the company, they are willing to let them set aside this time and say, this is the time I would like to make myself available for any kind of a voluntary service which I can deliver from my office. So we have this kind of a vast pool of people. It just requires some imagination, smart technology solution, smart tools, and once we are able to bring all of these together, we will become a nation who would not really have to worry about where we are going to find trainers, but we just have to focus upon our journey and get going with the whole process of skill development, and which I think is definitely feasible. It just requires, as I said, bringing together all of these elements in smart ways. So that is one area where we have not done much work as a country, and I think it requires some attention. The second area that I want to talk about is this whole aspect that we keep lamenting on, that while we are trying to do a little bit on skill development, training, and these students after finishing training, they go into companies, and when they start working, whether they undergo training or otherwise, companies are not 100% satisfied as of now with a vast majority of these candidates. I'm not generalizing, but a vast majority of them are still not meeting 100% of their requirement. So then what happens is companies end up spending the next 3 months or 6 months, they put them on the bench, or they have shadowing principle, they put them under somebody else to learn on the job, etc., etc. This is one of the reasons why the present government thought about internship, and there is some talk about bringing back the importance of apprenticeship and internship and adopt the German model into our system. Now, for a country like India, this is once again a tall order. Imagine thousands, not thousands, crores of students passing out every year from various institutions. And if you were to say, look, you have to put them all through internship model, this is going to be a very big challenge for the industries or small companies in any of these regions to adopt overnight. This is a system that we'll have to put in place, and it will take some time. While Germany perfected this model, they started off this right after the First World War, when they felt that, our country does not produce quality products, and we need to work upon it. And slowly they started integrating with the industry, and over 40, 50, now almost 70, 80 years, they have a phenomenal system which has been adopted in other countries like Switzerland as well. So what is a via media solution for us when we have such a large number of individuals who have to go through this internship model to acquire those acquire better exposure, become more confident, and become relevant for the industry? Two ideas or two possibilities come to my mind. One is to look at a way by which these candidates, the program, the education system itself integrates it and says, look, as you are undergoing a BA or a BCom, internship does not mean that you necessarily have to go to a company and work. But if we can give them a complete framework and set of tools and set of guidelines as to how to intern, I'm sure there are many, many ways by which they can actually acquire this exposure. Last night I was speaking to my nephew. He's studying in the second year of he's doing his second year undergrad. And as we were talking about internship, he said, I don't know where to begin. And there are many, many young people in this country, they really do not know where to begin, what to do. And as I was talking to him, I realized that he has a lot of interest in animation. And he knows nothing about animation. So then I told him, look, if you're interested in animation, then why don't you start spending some time on the website and then figure out in the area where you're living in Pune, go write to some companies and see if you can start doing some work either for them, not necessarily on a payment mode, but you can just do it free of cost and you can ask them what they want you to do and do it from home. So what I'm trying to get at is that there are many, many ways in which we can actually guide our young people to get them to have that exposure, not necessarily by actually a company only providing them with this opportunity, but with some guidance, with some tools, and with proper framework being provided. If this can be made part of the curriculum process, we will be able to get large number of people to get excited about doing internship. And that is another way by which we can make the skilling process much more effective and much more foolproof than what we are able to do today. The last point I want to make is about the model of skill development. When I talk about business model of skill development, we typically feel that there has to be a place where you have to go to learn, and there has to be a place where you have to go and you'll be able to find a job, or the employer will say, okay, you can find an opportunity to work with me. But other than this sort of an approach, can we think of academic institutions actually being able to create this kind of what I call the hospital model in their own premises? There is a company called Adventity that we were working with in Bombay. This is almost 7 or 8 years back. That Adventity got bought out by somebody else eventually. But this is a company which was specializing in financial accounting processes. And they were doing a lot of work for banks in the Middle East and some banks in India. And they had done a very, very interesting project. They actually got connected to the collector in Salem district in Tamil Nadu. And the collector agreed to provide for a facility to set up a small center in one of the government colleges where the students would be studying in the morning, and in the afternoon they would be actually working out of that center, which became an extended arm of this particular company. So what actually happened there was, during this process, students would be able to work on real projects. And they did this on an experimental basis for about a year, and they found this experiment to be really meaningful, and they did it for about, I think, 50 or 75 students at a time. So we wanted to extend that kind of a model, and we started thinking about the fact that large number of companies today are saying we need to create jobs for a variety of reasons. We would like to go to tier 2, tier 3 locations. But when they want to go there, initially, they have no idea whether we will get talent, what kind of skills will be there, whether it is scalable, whether it is something that we can manage from remote, what about confidentiality, and so on and so forth. There are many and skills required to manage them, supervise them, etc., etc. But imagine if academic institutions and these companies were to collaborate, and we were to pick particularly tier 3 locations in at least, let's say, 100 locations in the country to begin with. And in each one of these 100 locations, we create a 100-seater a model where students are actually able to spend 4 hours to 6 hours in a day after they have finished their academic requirements during the day. And then after 6 months, you have another batch coming in. And after 6 months, there is another batch coming in. So through this process of rotation, if we are able to look at an algorithm where maybe 20% will be permanent employees and 80% would be those who are doing jobs or who are working on those tasks where they do not necessarily have to be very highly skilled, but they would get that exposure and they would get that kind of an opportunity to experience what it is to work in this sort of an environment. So these are the kind of models which we should be coming forward to experiment. And I'm sure that with large number of companies today saying, how do I deploy my CSR funds in a way that it really is beneficial for the community? Many companies, if there is an opportunity to think of this sort of a model, and Mr. Sandhu is here, if the government also provides permission, particularly to government institutions, government educational institutions, to be able to set up this kind of a facility, all that they would be requiring is broadband, some computers, some arrangement where this whole setup is not really disturbed and there is a regular activity that is possible to happen there. This also creates provides an opportunity for a significant exposure for the faculty, for the parents, for the academic staff as to what really happens in this kind of an environment. So by doing a combination of these kind of, taking combination of these kind of approaches, we can address this very, very badly needed, the requirement of internship, which we are otherwise not able to fulfill. We will be able to think about different ways by which we can address this problem. The last point I want to talk about is actually thinking about how China has managed to address this skill development problem, particularly in the context of training. So we have, let's say, a retail training program. How do we deliver retail training program today? Majority of the training institutions, we have a classroom, we provide training, students learn, and then at the end of it, there is let's say, the assessment process. It is configured as per the sector skill requirement, and so on and so forth. So they do that, and then we certify, and we say, okay, now you're certified for so-and-so role. Same thing happens for most other vocations, except for maybe some vocational training institutions and some polytechnics or ITIs, where they have an opportunity to work with the tools which are required in the workplace. Majority of the training institutions, unfortunately, because they have limited resources, not that they do not want to train otherwise, but they have limitations of resources, limitations of funding. They are constrained to train them only in a typical traditional classroom format with some video thrown in and maybe some kind of mock role plays, etc., happening. But if you, some of you who might have seen how these training programs are conducted in a country like China, you have a complete hotel set up in a building. You have a complete hospital kind of an environment set up on a floor. You have a complete retail environment, a retail outlet set up in a floor. So entire training, including banking, for instance, if you're talking about retail banking, we train people for banking. We tell them, how do you receive a customer, how is a teller supposed to operate, etc. But 90% of the kids who work in the banking environment, that is the first day when they go to work in the bank, is the first day they've stepped inside a bank, because they've never had an opportunity to do that ever before. So how do we create cost-effective kits? And with that kit, it doesn't have to be as elaborate as what maybe countries like China and others are doing, but in a cost-effective way, can we create those kits? And with the kit, if we can embed the training program and create an integrated model, that can go a very long way in bringing in that real-life exposure with the students. So those are some of my thoughts. Happy to take questions and share other perspectives as we go along. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Uma. I'd like to ask Mr. Bhargava if you would like to contribute anything, or shall we open the session?
I'll just take, since I'm here, just contribute, please. I can contribute. Every time I sit with these IT people, I feel like I yesterday. Every time I participate with people from the IT industry, I feel like a yesterday. Talking to people who are tomorrow, we described what's happened on possible a day before yesterday, tomorrow. So that's the level of gap. Quite seriously, there is something, but I'll just make a couple of quick points on this because you've heard enough of me this whole morning. One, I think that the scale that we look at in the whole last of 5 years, if you have trained only 3 million skilled workforce have entered the market, both on call sectors. And if you want to do 250 million, clearly we need innovation, we need technology to do it. The other point, very, very briefly, I want to talk about, coming back to the manufacturing sector, there are a couple of points which which should be acknowledged, not as innovations in terms of scale, but innovation in terms of thinking. Cummins, we go to a lot of our vendors and ask them to, we change manufacturing process for the supplier and say, can you get this done by your workforce in small and medium enterprise? They said, iske liye worker ko train karna padega na? We said, yeah, train karna padega. He says, aap aisa kariye, can you do something by which either you give us a jig or you change a process, because hamare workers permanently rakhte hain. They're all contract temporary. So here is a whole lot of enterprises who are not willing to invest into training because our labor laws, whatever else it is, gets them into a cycle where they don't want to be permanently dependent on the skill of a worker. So they said, let them do what they're doing. You tell us some ways. So that's a big challenge in manufacturing emerging from the labor laws. And I just want to put the point. So one of the innovative solutions that we from industry had put forward when we are discussing the new labor laws, and I just stop at that, it's important. Good old days, historically 15 days of salary for every year of service is a VRS compensation. So government in the new draft labor code has made it 45 days. For every year of service. So this is something which is likely to come across in this. So we've said, okay, hello, you want to make it 45? Can you do 30 plus 15 days equivalent to be invested into training of the people who need to go out? So how do? You say you pay every year of service and get on to a concept of a training coupon for every year. Suppose somebody has put in 6 years or 10 years, 10 years multiplied is 3 months salary equivalent, give it a coupon, which he or she can encash into one of the authorized service providers. So you utilize that money, not just into that guy making something, but getting into train for another job. So that's one of the thoughts process we do. I just want to close here by saying, and Prashant is here from PIC, I want to say, social innovation is another thing where training would make a big difference. We talk about CSR, we want to talk about it, just not about skilling India only for the manufacturing purpose. We need to look at innovations which will really improve the social aspect of our conduct. So that's another area, Ganesh, where technology can help into this. So I'll just limit myself to this observation about manufacturing. But I'm always awed and inspired and dazed by when I hear all these IT people. And incidentally, this guy was a hardcore brick guy. He's done post-graduation in industrial engineering, and Ganesh has moved on from industrial engineering, hardcore brick and mortar to click now.
To now the social sector.
The session is open. You can, I think, raise any. Yeah, yes.
Hello, my name is Ajit Kale. Madam has said that skill to be imparted from the skilled person to the unskilled person when the training is to be imparted. What are the initiative Maratha Chamber of Commerce will take for this cause? How Maratha Chamber of Commerce will organize to enroll all skilled task force who are willing to train the people? Because she said that there is a great challenge of having a trainer. So a lot of trainers are available. How you can harness those skill?
Yeah, well, we definitely are working on a model wherein we are getting associated with some of the training providers. And of course, their training processes, certifications and everything will be vetted, and those who are considered to be good, they are being involved in it. And as I mentioned earlier in the morning also, that we have a membership strength of 3,000, and out of that, there are many big houses which have excellent training facilities, and they have excellent, trainers also. So they are also getting involved, and we are working on a scheme wherein all our members can come together and can have, some kind of a initiative where these youth can be trained. And further, after going through this training with the expertise of all these, the industries and the experts from the industry, after obtaining the certifications, whether they can be picked up by the industry and all that. A thought is definitely being given to that, and we are moving in that direction.
Yeah, I joined 1 month ago only in MCCI. The only reason I have joined, I can be part of a trainer.
Sure, we will take, definitely
Thank you
take.
very much.
Yes, please, at the back. Yes.
Yeah, yeah. Thank you for your inputs. A question that I have is the concept, especially Madam, you gave the idea of corporate kits and stuff like that. Create kits and or integrate the corporate kind of work into the education system. So what has been observed is that at a practice level, at the implementation level, what we found out that many of the organizations are unwilling to share some of their kind of work, whether it is analytics. Let's take analytical kind of a work or any kind of a design work. Even not forget about the students, not even to the faculties. What we are finding is the faculties are really not acting like consultants. Okay, they are pure theoreticians and academicians. So the integration at a conceptual level is fantastic, but when we actually try to do it on the ground, we find that many of those projects, they don't come to the institutions. And that is one of the reasons why we are still not being able to move. We have been talking about it for the last, I don't know, so many years. So what is the practical way out to make it happen? Or what is the will of whether it is a body like CII, NASSCOM, or anyone for that matter, to make it really happen?
See, I think this can happen only on account of two things. One is when somebody has a desperate need, okay, then they will come forward and say, look, let's make it happen. So an example of where there could be a need and willingness. You take I have not tried this out, but I'm presuming an entity like Pune Municipal Corporation. There'll be so many things that require to be done. If you think about various areas where there is a need for this sort of an impact to be made. So if only somebody were to go forward and ask the corporation and say, okay, which are the areas where maybe we can deploy our students to develop a small app for you, or maybe for cleaning the streets, or maybe for constructing maybe repairing some of the schools. If it is to do with the civil engineers, if they need to get some experience. There are many such projects which are there in front of us. But that need has to be the person who has to say yes to the project. We need to connect with the right person and say, we want to do this and can you let us do this? And we have seen some examples like this happening in other places. I'm sure if that need is awakened, people will be willing to sit up and take notice of who can support them. The second is through diktat. And that's where I was trying to mention earlier. If the government says, look, we have now come up with a CSR bill, and the CSR bill gives you a whole list of areas where the funds can be utilized. But as one of those items, if this can also be included, then I'm sure companies will come forward and will say, look, let us take the lead and let us work with the academic institutions. And that in itself will create the momentum for the institutions to say, I need to hire some industry faculty, somebody from the industry to be seconded to the institute maybe for 2 to 3 years, who will set up this kind of a momentum. So this is how I think we can make things happen. I mean, we are not honestly living in a situation at this point of time where there is automatic willingness or readiness in the system. As part of the skill development exercise, we've realized that we also have the responsibility to collaborate with various stakeholders and build the ecosystem. And it is only through this kind of a collaborative process that we can make things happen. Individually, either companies or the government or skills providers or the students alone cannot make it happen. We need to have that collaboration.
If I can just add to that, I mean, we are now set up, and it actually answers both your questions. We've set up under Maratha Chamber of Commerce an entity called the Pune City Connect. It's a Section 25 company. It has me, it has Pradeep Bhargav, Rahul Kirloskar, Meher Padamji, Ashwini Malhotra, quite a few people on the board. And it formally works both with CII and NASSCOM Foundation, and also with the Pune Municipal Corporation. The charter of that is what I said earlier, Suvidya Shakshar and Swachh Pune. But within that, I mean, your point, that how do you get, when I say City Connect, how do you connect well-meaning corporates with models of engagement with academic sector, and as Uma was saying with Pune Municipal Corporation, we'll be looking at. people like you, sir, I mean, who you said that, you really want to get engaged. I mean, we're quite happy to, engage with you and say, how would you? The basic theme is, while we create the platform, we're currently in the process of publishing a book on collaborative CSR in the city of Pune, which is nothing but showcasing 20 role models of companies which have really made a difference to the city of Pune and encouraging more corporates. I mean, somebody may have a 10 crore budget, somebody may have a 10 lakh budget, but how can each one of us collaborate and make things happen for the city? So that's the goal of Pune City Connect. And any one of you are interested, just talk to Anand, talk to me. We can certainly make it happen. You had a question, sir? Yes, please.
Can I ask a question? Yeah, my name is Uday Mehta. I run a company called Sunrise Computer Software, and we are the innovation partner of the world for NSDC. Also, I worked with the World Bank for several years. What I see is like we have a huge truck. Truck is like 250 million people to be trained, and we are all trying to push and hoping that the truck moves somehow. I'll explain to you. I'm sitting in UP on a tier 3 city. Are you able to hear it? Yeah. I'm in tier 3 city or tier 4 city of UP. For some reason, I get 10,000 rupees. I go undergo a training program for a particular course. What do I do next? Is choice. Unless we complete the cycle, we are just talking about the tier 1 and the tier 2. Yes, there's not much of a problem. We can deliver that. The real question I feel would come in at the tier 3 and the tier 4. After they undergo the training, even say 3 months training, I get 10,000 bucks. That's fine. What next? That's my question.
No, you're absolutely right. And I think, first of all, it starts with the very basics. We have to grow at 10% per year to create the kind of job opportunities in all sectors. So that is one clear requirement. The second is what I was alluding to, that you need to go beyond the, as you rightly said, tier 1 and tier 2 cities and make sure that the availability of literacy, counseling, skills is across the country. No doubt about that. It's not an easy challenge. I can completely agree with you. But again, as I was saying, if government, academic institutions, skills providers and industry work together, I think we can start making that impact. Pradeep, you want to comment on this?
No, I think the skilling is, as we talked about, and Mr. Sandhu is also, it's about employment and entrepreneurship also. So some of the skills imparted to tier 2, to whatever tier city you're talking about, if they gives them an opportunity for somebody to just be a beautician, or somebody to be a TV repair person, we're not all talking about jobs. If skilling those people at that level gives them an opportunity to be their own employer, entrepreneurship, that's something we should look. Doesn't matter if they don't come to as employees, but they can still be an entrepreneur. That's an opportunity.
I agree with what Pradeep is saying. What we have found is typically in a tier 2 or tier 3 location, if after training you tell them you have to come to Delhi, from UP you come to Delhi, and I will give you a job, how much salary are you going to give him? Maybe maximum 10,000 rupees? And large number of them do not want to do this. So long as they can stay on in their village or in their town, and they are in a position to earn even 6,000 or 7,000 rupees, they are happy with that. So what Pradeep is saying is extremely important. We have to also get our students to take pride in the fact that they have now got skilled and certified to do something meaningful and setting the base for a future career. It's not about what I will earn today or tomorrow, but also what I would be able to earn if I did not have these skills and this awareness. 5 years down the line, I would continue to be doing the same thing that I'm doing today. So it's a combination of all of these which we require to address.
Yeah, just to support that, this center at Chhindwara, which was aimed at about 12 companies, did that. The data revealed that almost 70% of the people who have been trained there for ranging from 2 weeks to 2 months, 70% of them actually went on for their own enterprise, own business. So that's what it comes to. Because somebody from Chhindwara may not go to L&T Powai, he won't come.
Exactly.
But L&T trains them to be able to do some little chota job in their own area near Chhindwara, wherever it is. So I think we just need to keep reminding that it will be not all employment, it will be largely to be able to do their own enterprises.
We are talking about tier 3 and tier 4. Karnataka, German, I'm talking about Karnataka. So we trained about 40 fitters and electrician, and they were all recruited. 54 of them by one company. Lifts, I was just sharing at the time. John, I think Mitsubishi or somebody. They gave them a ticket to go to Bangalore. Karnataka, 7 boys only went. After 15 days it was to go. They were all trained, bright students selected from 400 pool of them. Only 7 went, 3 came back in the same night, only 4 continued, and they were very angry. So we took it up as a challenge. Why? I mean, this has happened. In fact, I and the director of that institute, we called every parent and every one of them and found out. And I tell you, what Bhargav Sahab is saying, it's almost the same. They were the students, particularly in the age group of 19 to 21. And when we talk to their parents and say, "Sahab, 7,500 rupees आपने बोला है, Bangalore में, it's good, not bad. They are not getting even a 4,000 job in Gulbarga, but they say, 7,000, how much he will save? He will not save anything. So he's 21-year-old. I can afford to feed him for the next 3-4 years. I'll search if he gets a government job or some job here." So nobody went. Of course, then we tried and changed a little bit. That when the companies came and we selected 24 and 28 years of boy, there the parents also start feeling that he has to settle down and we were going. But then we started a course on pumps repair in the same institute. Instead of lift and other thing, that also is there, but pumps and motors repairing. And almost about 12 to 13% of them, our statistics says, went for their own. And many of them, those 17%, are employing their own colleagues who has been trained there. Because the pumps are required, this is. So, as you very rightly said, but another point, this company who came to us, I was sitting in Bangalore, they said that desperately we need about 50 boys, and we went from ITI to ITI in Bangalore, and they could not find even a single at 7,500 rupees, because there is an input side for the job requirement is there, but there is no input for the people. You have to go to the tier 1 and tier 4 cities, but if they are not coming, industry is also suffering. We'll have to find some ways. I mean, you can't create people in the Pune or Bangalore. I was in Pune working in an auto component company, and we used to get boys from far flung from Orissa and even Tripura and all those operators and all that. But they will also work for 6 months, and same we can't give an employment because of labor laws and all that. So there are a lot of other issues which we'll have to.
Very good issues have been raised. I mean, it's not that all the people would be going for the job employment and job wage employment. Many people have to be, absorbed in the geographies from which they are coming. I mean, we have been in this experience people coming from Gondia, Gadchiroli, and coming to this Chakan, and then after a few days they run back to those territory. I think the counseling is a very, very important with the agency. The work has to be taken, what Natarajan was saying. We are picking up the people and straightway sending them to the training. There's no pre-training counseling or putting them before them any roadmap or pathways they would be having. Like, after one year you will be getting this much and this you have to do. I'm a Palak Sachiv. We have a concept guardian secretaries for the districts. So I was in the field and I was talking to the people then why you are working on the EGS works, employment guarantee schemes. They were getting 150 rupees that time. And the scorching heat, and they were resting under the shade of the tree in the 2:30 in the afternoon. Then I talked to them because L&T has created this center at Panvel with a capacity of 400, but they are not getting more than, I think, 150 or 200. Construction sector, as it is, having very many problems of procuring the people for this. They said, no, sahab, हमें 50 रुपए का यहाँ दिया तो चलता है, लेकिन पूना में 200 नहीं लेना है. So that is the kind of thing that how then these people, can they be left alone? Should they be left alone in those status? So what I have been feeling this model which Sandhya was talking about, the KVK in Gujarat, because that is giving then small skills at the local level. And I interacted with them. After getting the training, they went to the local people, either jewelry shops and all. They started designing jewelry Mehndi wali ladkiyan kuch aisa. But then I thought somebody, if they can put them on the net and and then they made in the periphery, they are made available to the people. Like these are the people from these kind of skills. Yeah. So then they will be getting a lot of employment at the local level. So they will get self-employment also and they can prosper. But I think engagement level, the innovation should be for that. How to engage them on a continuous basis. We are not doing that. Either we are, after they drop out or after they pass out, they are not finding jobs. Then we have started interacting with them. Now the vocationalization of the education which we are now talking about, that is one aspect. How aggressive that is. Still we are finding the problem with the funding and all because it requires funding, infrastructure, everything. But can then be other ways also. I have been interacting with some principals of colleges. Can the senior students take the mentoring of the lower classes, or the peripheral schools? Everywhere, every school you have 10, 15, 20 brilliant students, either in the soft skilling, what Bhargavi, you are showing me the CD for the trainer. Why these kind of things cannot be partnered with the student itself? And in turn they can be deployed for the schools, for the junior classes. And why you are not? I mean, why you are having tuition classes? In the earlier days, weaker students used to get extra 1 hour tutored by some teacher. Now that is not happening. That has taken a totally commercial angle. And now all you are in the houses, you are teaching your own kids from other teachers. When we are talking about the scale and all, why the system should not have, as ma'am was telling, that in the afternoon, why the classes should not be held by the same staff or with some extra incentive maybe for these students. And they can be on the skilling, they can be on the further career options or the employment opportunities available. We are not doing that. And with the technology, you are not talking about the virtual classrooms and all. These can be reached very, very easily. And I think that also should be done. As far as the industries are concerned, I think when she was talking about that, somebody can go to PMC here and ask about or some apps to be prepared for that. I think the generosities are to be generated. As a skill development secretary for the last 7 months, Mr. Natarajan came to me, I think in March or something like that. February. I have been asking certainly, nobody does that. There are costs. I have been sitting people. I know she was talking about that we need to write the modules in for the RPL for assessment or for the norms, nurses and levels in Gujarati. How many people would volunteer कि हम लिख देते हैं ये बैठ के आपके? It's in English. इंग्लिश में बना हुआ है, कितने लोग हैं? मैंने बहुत बार बोला यहाँ पे, मैंने कहा यार मेरे साथ बैठो. I am drafting the MOU to be done with the industry. The standardized format maybe people from the industry they know this. I have been talking to various chambers. I have been talking to various, including CIA. Now we have started from last month. We have sat together with the CIA. Will work in 6 sectors and start doing something. So when the scale is involved and all these innovations, I think the industry has to have those kind of resources also spared in those times. And when we take off, we take off. Then everybody is on that. But teething problems, I have been struggling in the skill development because it's totally new. And my people are sitting here, they are from the employment. They never did anything skill development. QP, nurses क्या होता है पता नहीं किसी को भी. मैंने जब VTP बोला तो उनका बड़ा हवाइयाँ उड़ गई उनकी क्या VTP क्या होते हैं ट्रेनिंग प्रोवाइडर्स क्या होते हैं. So these are new things. So at that time, innovations from the industry, the people who can come forward, they can do a lot. I mean, when you are talking about the CD and the virtual classroom for our trainers, this can be done for even the trainees also. Either these are women, and I was talking to British Council, they have this training organized for the teachers for the math. They don't not only tell about how to teach math, but the financial literacy for the kids at that age, how they should be told. So gradually, grooming has to be, when we are talking about the skill, has to be at every level. So that inbuilt innovations have to be brought somewhere.
Thank you, sir. Let me, you're going to have dinner with all these, guys. So you can definitely raise many, many more questions while they are eating and you are eating. We will conclude this session here. And before I conclude, as a token of appreciation on behalf of all of you in NCC, I would like to give you a